Somewhere along the road of life, I decided that the path to happiness in my story is through making the world beneath the waves a little bit more accessible to the masses by means of underwater photographs. For though it was a love of adventure and image making that first led me to the water's edge, I quickly recognized how powerful sharing underwater interactions can be. For stirring curiosity in folks who will never get to experience the ocean firsthand fosters crucial conversations about our human impact, a fear of sharks, and why caring even matters. When I started out, I focused mostly on the animals. I spent several years traveling around different parts of Southeast Asia, looking for that perfect moment with a pygmy seahorse, which is really not that much bigger than the tip of a fingernail. I waited very patiently for a blue ribbon eel to come out of its hole and look me square in the eye. And then I got sand stuck in very uncomfortable and unfortunate places while trying to capture the warning displays of a wonderpuss octopus before it buried itself in the sand. I took long voyages around beautiful Indonesian islands looking for blossoming soft corals and pristine reef highways just buzzing with fish, and shallow water vistas that prove to us that there's still quiet corners left in this world. I spent over 100 hours in this homemade submarine off of Roatán, Honduras. Yes, homemade and submarine are probably two words you never expected to hear put together. But my good pal, Mr. Carl Stanley, who started building submarines in his parents' backyard in New Jersey at the age of 15, as you can guess, he's not your average character. And without a bathroom, a line to the surface, or an emergency exit, my life was truly in the hands of my barefoot friend. But what Carl really taught me is that bobbing along the dark ocean floor gives you a perspective of your existence that will change your perception of what is normal. We encountered otherworldly creatures that can suspend themselves vertically, many that shimmer, and then others that just move very slowly through the water column. We encounter creatures that can dance, but then also twirl. Others that seem oddly familiar, like this Venus flytrap anemone. And then some creatures that just prove to us that grumpiness is simply a universal feeling. On my first submarine dive, after a magical journey to the depths where the sunlight disappeared and the bioluminescence seemed to rain upwards as we fell, we landed at 2,500 feet, like a spaceship landing on the moon. And when the lights were flicked on and the sand had settled and my eyes had adjusted, I took in this unfamiliar world of sheer mountain ranges, sandy cliffs, and these boulders just spilling with corals that looked like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. If you had blindfolded me ahead of time and told me you were going to send me somewhere, anywhere in this universe, and then had me guess where we landed, Earth would not have been my first choice. But this just goes to show you how disconnected we are from our world's anatomy, that this space, which occupies over 70% of our planet, can be so unrecognizable, presents a problem when it comes to holding ourselves accountable for how we treat it. It is simply easier to sweep the ocean and its inhabitants under the rug of consideration. For how difficult is it to care about something that is so vast, so unknown, and yet so unseen? Now this is a picture of my buddy Tito. Now you probably don't see this, but I look at this photo with the affection that you might have for a photo of your puppy or your child. I know, crazy croc lady up here. I look at this photo with affection because I spent several hours in the water with my life and lens literally positioned at the opening of its mouth. Unfazed at all, he simply laid there like a stick and he barely moved. I even accidentally knocked into him once or twice, or maybe he knocked into me, I'm still not quite sure. But anyways, he didn't seem to mind, and I'm still here to tell the tale. But I look at this photo with affection, whereas most normal people view it with fear. For those teeth, they tug at your instincts as I am forcing you to jump in the water with me and confront an animal we have been trained to avoid. But if you think about it, the crocodile is not the scary one in this picture. For here lies this prehistoric creature that has survived the elements for millions of years, learning patience, steadiness, and the powers of observation. From a time when the dinosaurs were king all the way up to this moment on the TEDx stage, it has smiled on. And then here I am, a foreign animal, confronting it, disturbing it, and entering its habitat in a way that no other creature has done over the course of its 200-million-year existence. But perhaps you're not quite convinced by my friendship with a crocodile, which is understandable, but this is why I also use humans in my images. I find that putting a person in the frame, it gives us a sort of anchor for which we can identify with. And in short, the landscape is transported from the wild and it's brought into the human psyche, where we can toss it around with our imaginations until we've made it into something that is slightly more accessible. Call it natural narcissism, but putting a human in the frame, it starts to change our conversations. It was about 3 years ago when I really first started using people in my pictures. I was on Roatán again, but this time I was there to photograph a freediving competition between some of the world's best freedivers who were competing to see who could dive the deepest while holding their breath. Now, I know this sounds like some sort of childish bathtub shenanigans, but it really is serious stuff, and it's actually considered to be one of the world's most extreme sports. But I thought, instead of shooting them on this line, which is actually kind of boring, but necessary should they black out and need to be recovered, I thought, let's do something a little bit more fun. And so I gathered some friends and we decided to go where the sharks hang out. We did a couple of dives, scoped out the area, got to know the sharks, watched their behavior. At some point while we were down there, I had this little light bulb moment. And when we went back to where we were staying that afternoon, I was sitting on a friend's porch and just kind of thinking about this light bulb moment. And I looked over at his neighbor's porch and I was like, oh, he's got some nice furniture. And I said to my friend, I was like, do you think he would know if we stole it? Like, would he notice? And my friend was like, oh no, let's go, let's do it. And so we stole his furniture, climbed into his window, stole a lamp and some coffee mugs. Serves him right for not keeping it locked. So we stole this stuff, and then I gathered a safety team together of scuba divers, and the next day, we returned and we set up our own porch. And after briefing the scuba divers and the free divers on how we were going to coordinate in terms of assisted breathing, because I didn't want the free divers to have to keep going up and down 80, 90 feet, because that would have taken all day. And so we coordinated for safety, because safety is important. And then we stuck the freedivers in the chairs, and we waited for the sharks to do their thing. And when we got back that afternoon, I put this photo on social media because, you know, I thought I'd get a chuckle out of my friends, let my mother know I'm alive, which is important because she worries. But I had no idea how viral this would go. And pretty soon I had magazines and news outlets and even CNN calling me up for an interview. After mustering enough courage up to do an actual on-air segment with CNN where they ended up cutting the anchors' faces out and placing them on the faces of my friends because they thought they were hilarious, the images started being shared even more. Who knew? And so, you know, like a nosy kind of person I am, I started reading the social media comments. People were saying things like, that's not real, and internet trolls made fun of my photoshopping skills, which is hilarious because I stink at Photoshop. And so I really have to shoot what I see. So if you're still wondering, no, this is not photoshopped. Other people were saying things like, why aren't the sharks eating the people? Like they were so disappointed. Or these people are super dumb. Or these dumb people, they deserve to be eaten. But it was in this moment that I really recognized how impactful showing humans underwater without breathing apparatuses on can be. For it forces us to question our notions of human abilities in scary animals, and it inserts us directly in this world of vulnerability that we don't know, that we fear, but that we greatly depend upon for our survival. Today I use freedivers in a variety of poses and scenarios. Sometimes I'll simply have them standing on the ocean floor, daring to take on an illusion that they're on land. I actually find standing, especially with the arms crossed and the chest out, to be kind of an ironic pose underwater, Because if you think about it, down here, where your tools of power and destruction are mostly left at the surface, all we really are small pieces of dust at the mercy of a great ocean. Freediver William Trubridge, who's one of the best in the world, says that when he's diving, he feels like a speck of consciousness in the abyss. And so in order to celebrate our unity as opposed to our superiority, I will sometimes use this arguably iconographic pose, but not meant to be religious in this case, but I will use this as a sort of commentary on the spiritual connections that humans and Earth share. Putting humans with animals that are perceived to be harmful, you might have guessed by now, is something I actually really enjoy doing in my work. But I think this is because Hollywood and the media have really done a number on the reputations of the oceans and its inhabitants. I don't actually always have to use gestures, though, in creating a path of connection between my images and viewers, because fortunately, nature naturally provides us with these wonderfully familiar landscapes. Whether it's jagged cliffs, or a small field of lilies, or even a simple sunburst through the trees. Sometimes I'll go home from a shoot and I'll look at the pictures and I'll be like, wow, it's like the freedivers are almost flying through a fairy tale. A sense of nostalgia created whether from fairy tales or familiar landscapes is important because it tickles our emotions. Perhaps my favorite beckoning to the past is through using wrecks. Vessels of yesteryear, these relics of a life and sometimes tragedy once lived, they tell us a story and they evoke feelings of loss. As we all depend on shipping for energy, food, and goods, and we memorialize long voyages that once carried loved ones away from famine, persecution, and war towards freedom and recreation, wrecks remind us how dependent we are on the oceans for survival, but then also for hope. And on land, in today's world where real estate's expensive and where you're lucky to find that quiet corner all to yourself, it might be difficult to grasp that these images I'm sharing with you come from some of the less than 5% of the oceans we've actually explored. With a vastness seemingly so staggering, though, we treat our waters like a self-healing, never-ending resource that cannot possibly be altered that much by human activity. But I'm not sure we want to take a gamble on a resource that's responsible for 2/3 of the oxygen that we breathe. Even a simple rattling of the food chain breaks down links between animals and plants that need one another for balance. We forget that our impact has claws that reach from the outer layers of the skies to the deepest trenches in the ocean, touching every stratum of life, from the birds, the mangroves, to those deep-sea Dr. Seuss corals. Our collective story as humans and organisms is one of interconnectedness, and the oceans and its web of inhabitants, which are basically the heart and the lungs of this global machine, they need us to make their well-being our challenge. Explorer Jacques Cousteau once said, "We forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one, yet somehow we've become desensitized to indecency, this crazy sort of fear and superstition, and an absolutely disgusting form of neglect. We blindly scrape our ocean floors in trawling for our shrimp cocktails, and we are dumping these microplastic beads in our waters so that we can exfoliate for smoother skin. And we are leaking pesticides, fertilizers, and other chemicals in our rivers because of our agricultural choices and our lust for perfectly green grass. In our quest for ease and beauty, we are suffocating those very plants floating in the oceans that give birth to breath. Deforestation of the world's rainforests has had us up in arms for decades, but at thousands of feet deep and in a space so massive, our dirty deeds done underwater, they go mostly unseen, and therefore mostly unpunished. And so while the reefs, the sharks, and the weirdos holding their breath, they seem esoteric to the daily norms, the truth is, this ocean place, this is our daily norm. In fact, it's our yesterday and our today and our tomorrow, and it's that of our children, and of their children, and of their children. For though it's this place where those manta rays dance, and these crazy humpback whales, they migrate for thousands of miles to feed and to breed, it also cleans up our carbon emissions. It nourishes us with food, and it provides us with jobs from all spectrums, from natural resources, tourism, fishing, shipping, art, and so on. Protecting our waters is not a left-right issue because we all care about the medicines it provides and the weather cycles it commands. which affects our rainfall, our coastlines, and our river levels, which affects our crops, our mangroves, and our real estate, which affects our food output, more jobs, our bank accounts, and the very roofs that protect us from the elements. Unfortunately, many people in this world will never even get to see an ocean. To others, it's a 2D surface, an aesthetic finishing line for a sunset, or that dark place that one never really has to think about. But though many people will never have a direct relationship with the vast space beneath the waves, every single person on Earth enjoys eating and drinking and breathing. And so, while that latest shark flick drops in cinemas, and that local seafood in your supermarket has already made it to China and back to be packaged and processed, nobody's perfect, but consider taking a critical view of your daily choices. Look at the facts about scary animals and don't stoke fears. Find out how your seafood is caught and learn about the devastating effects of trawling and bycatch. Heck, use a reusable water bottle, switch out the lights, carpool, don't leave your car running in the driveway. Just because gas is cheap at the pump doesn't mean it's cheap on the environment. Figure out what is in your products and try to identify how you are contributing to this crazy plastic problem we've got going on in this world, even at a micro level. For if we don't begin a global awareness of our world's lifeline, its heart and its lungs, then the politics and the borders and the differences with one another, it'll all cease to matter. And so very humbly, I take photos of animals, but then also of people, so that we could see ourselves in a future that very much depends on the choices that each and every one of us makes every single day. Thank you.